This is an MFJ-867 UHF VHF Wattmeter. Measures power and SWR. Has 3 ranges: 20 watts, 200 watts, and 400 watts. But here's something kind of strange about this. You'll notice it's got a 400 watt range, but no 400 watt scale. And according to the instructions, you multiply in the 400 watt range, you use a multiplier. So I guess this was an afterthought. But here's what's really interesting. I downloaded the manual for this thing. MFJ-867 VHF UHF Wattmeter. But notice what it says on the front of their picture. Giant SWR Wattmeter. And this one has 20 watts, 200 watts, and 2 kilowatts. So obviously this is a picture of an HF wattmeter, it appears. So I don't know if this was an afterthought or whatever, but there's not a lot of information about this on the internet that I could see. So I thought I'd do a YouTube on it. Here's the schematic that's in the manual. And this is a manual, VHF UHF Wattmeter. The schematic in the back. It doesn't appear to be complete. There should be a line section in here that you connect your antenna and transmission line to, and it doesn't show it on this diagram here. And this was the only schematic I found on the internet. So I don't know how accurate this is. And also, if you look here, it says MFJ-868 giant SWR wattmeter. It doesn't say anything about UHF VHF, so I'm not sure if they use the same. There's an op amp in here and some other components, but I'm not sure what we'll find when we open this thing up. And like I say, again, this is the manual for the 867 with a schematic for the 868. So something is not right here, and I think we'll have to open it up and find out what's going on inside. So stand by, that will be next. Here's a view from the back. You've got your standard antenna and transmitter SO239 connectors, and then here's a couple variable capacitors in here, obviously for some type of calibration. Looking inside the unit here, here's the main board here. You've got your SWR, your adjustment pipe here. There is an op amp over here. I'll have to check the schematic. You got your switches. So I'm not sure if they use the same board and just used a different line section or how that works. But anyway, what's not in the schematic is this board here. Right here. I'll take this out. It'll be a little easier to see. But anyway, you can see you've got a line section from the transmitter end on the left here. You've got a line section that goes through to the output, and then you've got your 2 couplings here for the forward and reflected power, and that's fed through 2 diodes here and here, and then they go through looks like a ferrite bead over a connector on each end here, and then they're led with wires out to the main board. So for some reason this is not in the schematic. This is just a 9-volt battery connector. You can run this thing on 9-volt transistor battery if you want. This does have a lit meter. It's got, yeah, it looks like it's got 2 incandescent bulbs here. I'm going to replace these with LEDs. Don't really need incandescent. Here's another look of the main board here, if you can see. I can't read any parts numbers here without a magnifier. You've got some calibration pots down here. Nice big meter. That's what caught my eye. This was at a ham fest. This was very inexpensive. I was surprised. I figured it didn't work. I brought it home and it actually works. But now the big question is, what's the actual circuitry of this thing? Is it what's in the manual, or is it something different? I'm going to remove this board here, and we'll take a look at that a little closer, and I may redraw it since it's not in the manual. So, oh, by the way, there's a barrel connector on the back for 12 volts, and for this thing to work, this supplies power to the illumination, the lights. There's these two incandescents and the op amp on the circuit board. So to get this thing to work, you apply 12 volts DC here or 9 volt battery. So I'm going to remove this detection section here, and then we'll take a closer look at that. Stand by for that. I've desoldered where the SO239 connectors connect to the line section here. Pretty easy. I just unsoldered the pins of the connectors, which come through the back. Looking on the back, it's pretty poor workmanship here. This cap here that should be grounded, it's not grounded unless it's just barely touching the there's a solder blob on this side of it. I'm assuming it should be grounded like the others. There's a cap on each side of this ferrite bead. Here's your two adjustment capacitors here for calibration, and they go through and they connect to the anodes of the diodes here. Not real impressed with the workmanship on this thing. I'm going to redo that solder joint here. Other than that, it's not too bad. Here I redrew the line section here. Here's where the transmit comes in through the SO239 here. Got your line section that goes through across to the antenna. You got your forward and reflected strips here. This is a standard line section here. Diode to pick off. Diode to pick off. You got a, here's the two variable caps. They go from the diode anodes to ground here and here. Ferrite bead over this section here. This acts as a filter here. Here's where your leads exit here. You got a violet wire, a red and a black, and they come off here and connect to the main board down there. So if you have one of these and have the schematic and it doesn't have the line section, here's the line section. So I don't know why they didn't put that in the schematic. Interesting. I'm going to resolder that bypass cap here. I'm going to reinstall the line section on the back, and then I'll move forward from there. So we'll test this thing out. Stand by for that. Now I'm going to calibrate the meter here. I've got a Bird dummy load, Bird 43 watt meter, and the MFJ here. And I am going to key this 2 meter rig on 5.2 into the dummy load. Let's see what happens. The Bird shows 7.5 watts, and this one shows 8.5 watts. So what I can do, I can adjust. This is the 20 watt trim pot right here. I'm going to adjust this one until the meters correspond here. So let me do that, and then I'll be back. I adjusted the 20 watt trim pot, so now they're both measuring 7.5 watts. So I'm happy with that. I've got to get a 100 watt slug for this one. I'm going to calibrate the UHF. I'll have to hook up, I think I'll hook up the FT736 there, and then I'll calibrate it on UHF. I'm not going to do that on the video because that would be boring. So I like this. I like the big meter face on it. It's kind of nice. You can see it from a distance. I see it's got one of the bulbs burn out. I'm going to replace them anyway. They're incandescent. I'm going to put 2 LEDs in there. May go with a different color too. We'll see. It'll look nice. It's interesting how there was a discrepancy between the manual in the actual meter. So it almost seems like this was a modification, and they just printed out a new face and put a different slotted line. I'm not sure what they did, but look around on the internet. I didn't find anything that showed the slotted line on here, so I'm not sure what the deal was. Anyway, it's working, and that's all that matters to me. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.